Well, boys and girls, the mothership has connected YouTube style. Welcome aboard our first ever live Q&DA. I'm thrilled about this. How about these graphics, this music? The Marquette Marvel, Aiden Hatton, is right now crushing it behind the scenes. And this is kind of a new project in 2024 that I wanted to delve into. And I'll give you the reasons why, and then we'll get into this thing. The reasons why is, as you may or may not know, I left CBS Sports Radio after 11 years back in October, and an amazing 11 years for what I felt was an incredible opportunity, one that I could not pass up, and that was Sirius XM Radio's morning show on Mad Dog Sports Radio, the flagship sports channel for Sirius XM. So I had to take it. But we had such this incredible army of listeners, the D-Aliens, far and wide, nationwide, globally, that had listened to me either in Miami or Kansas City or Boston or came through one or the other affiliates during those 11 years. And we had this incredible surge of people that did follow me over to Sirius XM, but some that did not. Some couldn't afford to have a subscription or had too many things going on in their life anyway. And I said, what I want to do in 2024 is make sure there is a universal meeting spot for everybody. The listeners that have been with me forever and new listeners that are with me on the new channel and new followers here on the YouTube channel. And so I started putting together these videos, just daily takes on the YouTube channel, and the feedback was awesome. I mean, specifically from A's fans, every time I go after John the Con Fisher, it is incredible. So what I want to start doing is a regular Q&DA where you can shoot me any questions. These could be sports questions or non-sports questions. It's all good. Everything is open season, and also a place where we can build a community right here every week. And so we are planning, the Marquette Marvel and myself, planning on a weekly spot, probably Sundays, maybe Sunday evenings, so that people have their weekend already done and you're not busy. You're heading into the week where we do something like this and other stuff. It might not be a Q&DA. It might be a full-fledged show. We might dust off a few of the old classics, maybe have a few of the old characters drop by. We'll see. But this is what we want to do, is build the D-Alien hub where everybody can be here from all of the years that I've done all of this stuff everywhere. So I'm excited. I know Aiden's super excited. We're just thrilled to start getting this thing off and running. And YouTube gives us this incredible platform and all the bells and whistles that, you know, were not available to me when I was a high school senior trying to build out a career. But 20 some odd years later, I'm like, I could do a show from my basement. Well, now it's like Wayne's World times 1,000. Let's do this. Okay. So in honor of the D-Aliens, one of my favorite listeners ever, I consider him a friend, Dixieland Dan, for Christmas, got me Russell's Reserve. And I said, I'm going to hold this until a very special moment. Okay. And this is the special moment. So I'm pouring this as we go through a Q&DA. All right. Now you want to see the glass that I'm using. I went to a secondhand, like a thrift swap meet type of thing a couple of years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago now. And I got this Apollo 13, 1970 glass. This is Apollo 13 before the launch, okay, when it was going to be a raging success. And I was smitten by this, as you might imagine. Old school spaceship, space, 70s, vintage glass. I'm in, right? So I'm pouring myself a glass. I encourage you to as well. Sit back, relax. You can be active in this and send me questions. We've already got a bunch of questions picked up. If you want to be passive and just lurk, you can do that as well. So Dixieland Dan represents all the D-aliens, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. I've heard great things. It's from Kentucky, so I'm a little bit of a bourbon snob. My wife went to University of Kentucky, so I only drink the stuff from Kentucky. So salute, cheers to many more. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's really good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's get this thing off and running, all right? Let's do this. And by the way, for all of the years that I've done a YouTube stream or a Twitch stream for my old show on CBS, the group chat was one of the most fun places to be. So use this the same way. Come in, enjoy, chat amongst yourselves, react, respond, have your own family going on. That's what I love about all of this, all right? So let's start things off. This was from the video that I did recently about the Fanatics nonsense, the Fanatics Fiasco. And this is from Matthew, who writes, DA, I don't understand why Manfred's announcing he's stepping down as commissioner in 5 years. Is this the farewell tour where you tear everything down, Rob? I have to say that it's never easy to embrace the commissioners. None of them are ever warm and fuzzy. I mean, none of them have ever been the type of guy that you'd want to sit down and have a beer with. But Rob Manfred particularly feels completely tone deaf, as though he lives in some little treehouse overseeing Major League Baseball, and he doesn't really have either any connection to regular people, or if he does run things by a staff, he doesn't listen to the staff. Because where in this playbook of kind of like gaining momentum after the rules changes is there, oh, and you should announce before the season you're retiring in 2029? It feels so out of left field, almost as though you wonder if A, he just speaks without thinking, or B, it's one of these, I'm going to plant this here so that you won't have me to kick around anymore. I mean, if Adam Silver or Roger Goodell or Gary Bettman said, I'm going to retire in 5 years, we'd be like, okay. And all three of those guys have a much longer tenure of success and resume than Rob Manfred. Manfred's been on the job for 5 years, 4 years, something like that. I mean, it hasn't been very long. So to already be talking about your retirement seemed so tone deaf. Nobody wants to hear it. I don't know why you do it. And it just comes in the context of, or the backdrop of, how ridiculous this Fanatics thing is. And the Fanatics thing is kind of like beyond comprehension in a lot of ways, because it's so bad and everybody knows it's so bad and it's so obviously bad, and it didn't take experts to know it was going to be bad, that it's so indicative of a sport that has no oversight in some ways, because either they're worried they don't know what they're doing, or they're just out to lunch and lazy. You're going to outsource the brand of 150 years that you've built in Major League Baseball to an apparel maker. Okay, that's not crazy. Other sports have done this before. But when they come back, or they send you the mock-ups and you see the nameplates are that much smaller, and you ask them, well, what type of material are you using? And they have to tell you that it's going to be far more thin. It's going to be see-through, maybe. Like, of course, Fanatics, Nike have had to mock them up and put them on models and put them on mannequins, what have you. It's so wild to me that Major League Baseball just had no idea this was coming. And that, for the good of the rules changes that baseball went through last year, this is such an incredible black eye. It's a joke. It's comical, and it feels very on brand for Rob Manfred. Next up, for one of the A's videos, the multitude of A's videos that I've done recently, this is from the Short Bus Express. It should be noted that I took a short bus to and from elementary school when I was younger. I grew up in a relatively rural area of the Hudson Valley of New York, and so we didn't have a huge school, and we had a lot of roads where it was rural roads. And so I was on one of those rural routes, and so there wasn't enough kids to fill up full bus until I got to high school. So probably from kindergarten through 8th grade, I rode the short bus. So, dude, short bus unite. I'm like all here for that. Okay. We got a bad rap. We got a bad stigma. But the Short Bus Express writes, are you a Scotch guy? If so, I got you, dude. By the way, I love the A's content and an outlet to talk some about your favorite whiskey, bourbon, and Scotch stories. I am not a Scotch guy. The only hard stuff that I can really do these days at 44, going to be 45 in June, is bourbon and tequila. I know that's probably two of the harsher ones, but Scotch bites my throat real hard and doesn't let go. I'm like, oh. And vodka was my first hard alcohol disaster in college. And so from then on, can't even touch the stuff. I mean, every so often a kettle and one and soda, maybe. But bourbon, I love because there's such a variety of flavors and depth of flavors. And tequila, I love because I like how clean it tastes. And if you want to go mezcal, you want to go reposado, there's just a little hint of a little bit different here or there. But I got to be careful because, the two sides of my family, one side is Slovak, one side is Italian. Neither one holds their liquor very well. So I need to be careful because I tend to get into a speed drinking thing where it's like, oh, just keep them coming. And so beers, that's fine. You race through 6 beers, 7 beers, you're still standing. You race through 7 bourbons, you race through 7 tequilas, you race through 7 mixed drinks. You're just like on the floor. At least I am. So I need to, like, my hard stuff is my sipping stuff. That's a long day. That's after a long week. It's doing something like this where I can kind of enjoy it at a pace, because if, I'm out and it's social or I'm feeling a little good, it's like, let's just keep them coming. And that, this is great. But I'm all for great drinking stories, because I do feel as though perhaps the most joy I've ever gotten in my life, aside from having our child and getting married and some of those huge, monster events, is when I'm sitting around with friends and we're either eating or drinking. That communal experience is so powerful to me. It's got to be, my lineage, because in Eastern Europe, it's like we have pictures from the old country where everybody is sitting around on a farm, and they're sharing some homemade wine or homemade, alcohol or whatever. And it's like the greatest thing of all time. And, on the Italian side as well, it's the same thing. You get together for a big meal. You have to have wine. You have to have beer. You have to have something to drink. So those moments to me are so powerful and so great, so much joy, that I love when people really appreciate the good stuff, because sometimes life doesn't need to be about more than just eating and drinking and having a good time with friends or family. It's very simple in a lot of ways. Number 3, cigar smoking dude, my man. This guy's been with us for a long time. I love him to death. He's a lawyer down in North Carolina. He has the funniest stories about court. He has the funniest stories about life. He calls into the show regularly. He did at CBS. He does at SiriusXM. My man, Badlands Booker was on Fox News tonight talking about how to eat at all, you eat buffets. Hilarious. And yeah, I had a couple of people send me this. Badlands Booker is a competitive eater. Badlands lives in New York, and so he's been part of our show for a long time with the hijinks. He's come in to do a chicken challenge where we ate a bunch of chicken nuggets. He came in to eat hot dogs, the Wienership challenge. He taught me how to eat hot dogs. If you check out my YouTube page and scroll through my Nomad episodes, which was the series before this one, you'll see how to competitively eat. Badlands teaches me on the streets of New York City how to eat a hot dog. Hysterical. And yeah, I mean, Badlands is the best because he's got no ego. He's come to our events before. He came to the Bob's Bar show, which, by the way, there's early conversations about getting it done again this summer. Probably June is what we're kind of like floating around right now, of getting everybody together at Mraz's backyard bar that is his dad built at the house that he grew up in. We've done 3 years there in a row. And even though we're not together anymore on the radio, we're still trying to make sure we do this. So we'll let you know when the time comes. But that's why I got to keep it right here on the Q&DA. These are where these questions can be answered. But yeah, Badlands is just amazing, because Joey Chestnut has the biggest ego ever. We had him in, and he was so hard to deal with. He was such a diva. And Badlands, text him, yeah, what do you need me to do? Yeah, I'll come in. Yeah, no problem. Where do you need me to go? Yeah. We're like, what can we get you? No, nothing. Don't worry about it. He's so nonchalant about how much he eats. He's so nonchalant about how much he drinks. The fact that he's become a YouTube sensation for drinking stuff out of that boot, Badlands Chugs, is so amazing. And, down with Chestnut, up with Badlands. We love you, Badlands. We love you. Number 4, Timbo Slice, also great listener, was talking about the Bret Michaels interview we did the other day, who was the front man for Poison. Any way we could get Motley Crue or Van Halen as the next guest, DA? I know their discography more than Poison, and I have parodied most of their songs for you guys. Kickstart my Babs, or Hey Dr. DA. All right, I like it. I like this. Or Amendolara to Panama. Amendolara. Bret Michaels was awesome the other day. And again, a guy that could certainly have a huge ego that doesn't. He was totally cool with us. If we didn't end the interview, he wouldn't have ended it either. I love that part of Sirius, is that we have the space to do really great long form interviews. That part of it. We had Neil deGrasse Tyson on. We taped it. It came out to 35 minutes, I think, and we had to whittle it down to 28 for air. We didn't even have to. We could have played all 35, but just for brevity purposes. But I mean, I couldn't do that on terrestrial radio. So that was really, really cool. And Bret Michaels, after he was off the air, I said to the crew, I go, all right, everybody, I could have done this on the air too. I said, map out for me, describe to me what you think a random Friday night in 1987 was for Poison and Bret Michaels. I'll try to wrap your mind around that, okay? I said, you've just gotten done to the Cincinnati Civic Center. I don't even know if that's the name of the arena. 1987, you just wrapped up a show. You have all these girls in the front row that are wearing, their hair up high like this, monster 80s earrings, something totally cut in leopard print or something. They're throwing bras, I'm sure, on stage. Guys are rocking out. They want to be you. You're just killing. You're crushing. Now, what are you doing after the party? Where are you going after the party? What does the hotel room look like? What is the festivities? What could you imagine? And that's just a life for 10 years, 15 years. I mean, however long you can keep that gravy train going. And at their peak, they're on MTV every couple of minutes. And they post posters of Bret Michaels, adorn bedrooms all across America. I mean, that must have been a hell of a ride. And I know that a lot of them tend to be a little repetitive when you do Behind the Music, but I still like to put myself back in that spot. What is that moment like for Poison? What is that? What is that night like? Walk me through every minute of it. Number 5, Wallace, question of the day. This dude is one of the most prolific tweeters we have. If Will Levis got pork bacon flavored coffee, would he still put mayo in it? So we did this story the other day on the air because apparently there's Starbucks, I think. It's a coffee chain in China that's trying pork flavored coffee. And I'm not a coffee drinker, so this sounds absolutely reprehensible to me. However, the crew was saying that if you like coffee, it goes so well with like a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, or it goes so well with breakfast that the taste of bacon with your coffee is very enjoyable. And Lou, our executive producer, is a big donut guy. And he said, if you ever have like a donut that has maple bacon, candied bacon on top, you have a coffee, there's nothing better. So he was like, this would work. For me, though, I don't like the taste of coffee so much. I like coffee ice cream, but that's not even really coffee. So I could not imagine having a pork-flavored coffee. It seems just totally disgusting to me. But Will Levis definitely would put mayo in it. Definitely. And, by the way, Will Levis had a surprisingly effective final month and a half of the season. So maybe that is his superpower. Mayo and coffee and everything else. Number 6. The Cliff Kingsbury video. It's from Alex. I like how you're telling it like you're reading a bedtime story to your kids, DA. Yeah, my Cliff Kingsbury rant. You've probably heard this before because I've done it on the radio a number of times. Also, you might have seen the video on this YouTube channel. My wife, aka the Bourbon Bell, likes to say, there's kind of like a DA hit list. You kind of know on your bingo card what DA is going to want to go after. And Cliff Kingsbury is one of those boxes on the bingo card. And I'll tell you, the reason that I get so bothered about Cliff Kingsbury is because I just believe that there are so many people in the media, fans as well, but the media's trained to supposed to be this kind of unbiased observer and to see fact. And I realize that things have been distorted, but the sports media, there's certainly still an element of we're here to report the game unbiasedly. We're here to report the press conference unbiasedly. That's kind of still supposed to be the way that it works for many that cover it. And I cannot get past the fact that Cliff Kingsbury has built a reputation as an offensive genius for so many people in the media based on looking good. I'm serious. Even when I went off on Cliff's most recent hire as the OC in Washington, I still got people going, well, DA, he's not going to be the head coach. He's not. Why are you so upset about this? He's a great offensive mind. He's just running the offense. And I'm like, but what evidence do we have that he runs a great offense? At Texas Tech, with Patrick effing Mahomes, they won 7 games. Last year at USC, working with Caleb Williams, Caleb had a worse season than his Heisman season. And there were 3 or 4 Pac-12 teams that averaged more yards through the air per game than USC. At Arizona, did Kyler Murray run an incredibly smooth and explosive offense? Or were there plenty of false starts and mistaken plays and turnovers and, the second half of the season, the team always collapses? And a lot of this is that Cliff's acumen or scheme or whatever is implanted early in the season, before the season, and he never adjusts. And so the second half of the year, there's a collapse every single year because defenses now have half a season on you and they catch up and, they see you the second time or what have you. So why are we assuming that Cliff Kingsbury runs a great offense? USC ran a better offense before he got there. Patrick Mahomes has a better NFL career than college career. Kyler Murray didn't grow up under Cliff Kingsbury. Where are we getting this from? And I honestly think it's because he looks good in sunglasses. I mean, I hate to say it, but if Jim Tomsula or Jim Caldwell or Mike, or pick your weird-looking head coach, if any of those guys Adam Gase would have had the resume that Cliff has had, would anybody hire him again? Adam Gase, because he has boogly eyes looking all which way during a press conference, will never get a job again. Cliff Kingsbury just keeps landing head coaching jobs or OC jobs. I can't stand that. There's no actual evidence he's good at this. There's none. I haven't been served any evidence that Cliff Kingsbury is good at his job. So, yeah, I'm going to rant about it. Yes, I won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Mr. Turtle, I like turtles, says, I need to see a big head, little body DA baseball card like the scorecards of the 90s. Hint, hint, DA. Well, that would be very exciting if we did have big head, little body, bobblehead DA baseball card. But, I mean, that would take a long, long time to that would, I mean, there's my big head on a little body with a huge hat on. Yeah, we have that from the Super Bowl, which was a very popular. Oh my God! Look at what the Marquette Marvel did. Oh my goodness, that's pretty good. Oh, those cards were amazing. Look at that Griffey card. That's a poster. That's a legit poster. That's something you could hang up in your room. Wow. And so I wonder what card I was transposed over. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I just dug out of in my old bedroom at my parents' house. I was digging some stuff out because we're converting that old bedroom and had a bunch of my old stuff in it into like a kid's room for our son and other grandkids, etc. I was going through some old stuff. I found some great stuff that I'll have to show and tell at Q&DA at some point. But I found my old collection of bobbleheads, and before bobbleheads became cool, I had an old school New York Mets one in the back of my high school car. I drove a 1972 Oldsmobile Cutlass for my high school car. That was a classic car even when I was in high school in the 90s. But my dad wanted me to be safe. He loves muscle cars. So, I mean, luckily gas was really cheap back then because I think it got like 10 gallons of the mile, 10 miles of the gallon. Anyway, I have the sun-bleached Mets bobblehead that I found, which is great. It's head crack from slamming against the back window. But also I found a Harry Carey bobblehead that I got in Chicago at least 20 years ago. I'm very excited about that as well. So I'll have to show those to you guys at some point in time. That made me think of that. Next up, Rich posted about my Tecmo Bowl post. You can't use Bo Jackson, DA. Who are you using? The answer is Krishna Okoye. There is no answer for Bo Jackson, obviously, in Super Tecmo Bowl. But if you had to, Okoye is the next best thing, the Nigerian Nightmare, because he's simply impossible to bring down. The issue is you have a much more limited offense around him with the Kansas City Chiefs of that era, but still, it's fine. You have Derek Thomas on defense. I posted this because I found this ridiculous video of this kid in, I think, a Bollywood movie who was like pointing and dancing, and it was hysterical. I think also from the 70s. And I just said, this is how I felt on a Friday in 1989 when we had rented Tecmo Bowl for the whole weekend. And this is an interesting idea, concept, but once upon a time, you rented video games. Now, of course, you just download them, you stream them. Maybe you have the physical version, although I don't even know anymore, probably not. But way back when, even if you didn't buy one because a game cartridge was $50 or something, you didn't know if it was going to be worth it, so you rented it first. I rented Super Tecmo Bowl 2 or 3 times over an entire weekend. Now you might think, well, doesn't it just make sense to buy it, DA? Yes, but Mom and Dad Amendo were not going to do that until Christmas. So, let's just say it was like $3 a day, $2 a day or something. For $6, $9, you get 3 days of Super Tecmo. That was a big freaking deal. And it kept stats. And that's like the most ingenious thing about it, because you could then go through a season and keep your stats. Unlike a lot of the old video games that you couldn't, you had to like tally them down. I don't know if anybody had. I was a Sega Genesis guy, so we went Atari 2600 that I inherited from my older cousin Mike. He was 6 years older than me, so I inherited his Atari 2600 and all the Atari games. That was our first console, me and my brother. My brother's 4 years younger than me. So that was our first one. Then we graduated to Nintendo, the original Nintendo. Then we had the choice, Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. I was told back in the day, probably when we got it, 7th grade maybe, sports games, you got to go to Sega. All right, fine, let's do it. So we went Sega Genesis. Then I went PlayStation 1, and then I went PlayStation 2. Since I didn't go the Super Nintendo route, I didn't go GameCube or N64. So PlayStation 1 and then PlayStation 2, and then I quit. And the story of my gaming career comes to an inauspicious end. I was a big brother for Big Brothers Big Sisters in Kansas City. This was 2007 probably. My last year there was calendar year 07. I left in January of 08. So this was probably 06 and 07. It was such a great experience. And my little brother, I nicknamed Showtime. This dude was amazing. He was just such a laugh. He was almost taller than I was. He looked like Chris Bosh, like in mini form. I'm like, you are hysterical. What do you want to do? He's like, I want to play video games. I said, let's do it. So I had PS2. I had college. I had NCAA football. This is probably the 08, right? NCAA 07 or 08. I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm running through program mode, franchise mode, dynasty mode. I'm like, I got this. He's 13. And he killed me so bad. I think at half, it was 31-3. I think it finished up 52-10 or something. Like, it was so humiliating. I was like, dude, I've been lapped. The joystick is yours. I'm walking away. I can't do it anymore. That was so humiliating that a 13-year-old could destroy me by like 50, 60 points. That was it. I hung him up. I hung up the controller. Really, I don't think I played a video game after that. It was that humiliating. I know you know what I'm talking about. If you have kids, which is very funny because back in the day, my buddy Mike and I, we were the Sega Genesis guys. So we would play the same games, Madden, NBA Live, all that stuff. And we both tried to get our dads to play. Like, come on, Dad, come on. And like both of them picked up the controller, didn't know what they were doing, couldn't even like do one thing. We're like, it's a lost cause. We'll never be like them. And now, oh, I totally am. Forget it. When my son AJ has a video game system, whenever that's going to be, he's 9 months old, he's going to cook me. He's going to cook me. It's going to be a disgrace. What can you do? Walter writes it on YouTube about the Fanatics video. I don't see Jerry Rice or Walter Payton on that wall behind you. Shame on you, DA. These are some of my favorite players ever. This is from a really cool artist that I found on Etsy online, ETSY. It's like a marketplace for people that do, arts and paintings and prints and stuff like that. I said, these are so cool. So as you can see, I mean, I am who I am. What can I say? All of these are throwback players. They have plenty of contemporary players. This artist does everything. Like, he's got plenty of modern players, but I'm just like, this is my era, 80s and 90s. So, yes, I do not have Jerry Rice or Walter Payton, not because I don't love both those guys. I'll tell you, I love both those guys. I had a Jerry Rice jersey growing up, and it was just that there was only so many of them that can fit in the backdrop, and I didn't think they fit with, generally speaking, what you see behind me, which is waisting up. Almost all of these are waisting up. Michael's the only one that's not. You had to have Michael. Everybody else is what they call a hero shot in television. If after a guy makes a basket, after a guy scores a touchdown, executive director tells the camera guys hero shot, and the hero shot is basically your torso. So it was going to look weird if I had the Walter Payton one because it didn't look like this, and Jerry didn't look like that either, which is the reason I didn't have an LT back there. The LT one is like from the shoulder pads up. It looked a little weird. But all three of those guys are three of my favorite players of all time. Walter specifically is all class, an amazing running back, played on some awful Bears teams forever, then finally gets his moment of glory with the 85 Bears, and then they don't hand him off the football at the end zone, doesn't get a touchdown in his only Super Bowl, and it really crushed him. And Ditka apologized about that then. He still apologizes to this day. But what a sin, because Walter was all class and he had played for so many bad Bears teams. On that note, I picked up my dry cleaning the other day. Randomly behind the dry cleaning desk was an old school Mike Singletary jersey. And it wasn't a throwback as though they had bought it on Fanatics or bought it, at NFL Shop. This was the old kind of like knit, meshy jersey with screen print. And I'm like, this is so awesome. Some dude or chick, I guess, has a Singletary jersey from 1988 and is bringing it to the dry cleaner. And it's clearly so important that it's hanging alone behind the counter. Nobody can touch it. I said, that guy's my new best friend. All right. So I encourage you guys to send your questions as well on either Twitter at Damon Amendo or here in the chat as well, or you can send it to us on YouTube. And just a little reminder to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. That way you'll get notifications when we do this again. And we're going to try to do Q&DAs, regularly, and then also put together what we believe is a really cool show as well that we're going to go live with on YouTube. So make sure you hit the subscribe button below so that you get notifications when we go live. Scott writes in the comment section, I've heard Otani will not be playing in the game all spring until opening day in South Korea. Just had surgery in the offseason. What are your thoughts on him not playing a spring game for his new team? I have always a tendency to believe that we don't really know what's going on with Shohei Otani because he keeps things so close to the vest. So I always take a wait-and-see approach on things like this. We haven't even hit games in spring training yet. So let's see. If that's the truth, I don't think it really matters. I think he's that great. And I do think that Shohei, for as, quote, great as he is, and we all know that he is, I still think he's actually underrated and undermarketed in some ways. And I think what hurts him is that his personality is so buttoned up. He's, now granted, I think he can have fun, but we don't hear that in interviews. And so I think people don't quite know what to make of this kind of like mystical guy that can do both things. And I hope by the end of his career, Shohei becomes a little bit like Ichiro, where even though, English is not his native language, he becomes comfortable enough to kind of have fun and show his personality. Cause I think people really embrace that. Cause I really don't believe that people understand truly what's going on with this guy. For 100 years, we never had anybody full-time hit and pitch. And we certainly never had anybody who was great at either one of them, let alone both, since Babe Ruth. And he's doing both. And it's like it's no big deal. And I know that he's not going to pitch this year, but I still think that's remarkable where he's going to go out for a full season and probably hit 35 to 40 home runs, if not more. And we know that he's just taking a breather from being an ace of a pitching staff. I really don't think we truly comprehend, including myself, that type of level of attention. Scott writes in, hey, thanks so much for helping bring true light to what's going on with my A's and the relocation, quote unquote. So people probably wonder why I spend so much attention on the A's thing. And the reason is twofold. Number one, it bothers me to no end to see loyal fan bases, just being a loyal fan in general, even if it's not a fan base, be exploited. That always has bothered me most about sports, is that it's such a deep connection that you have with your team. It's not like buying toothpaste. It's not like buying a car. The people say, well, it's capitalism, but it's really not. These are civic institutions. And I say this because I didn't have a choice to root for the Mets or not. My grandmother back in the 50s, she came over here on a boat from Slovakia. She went to Brooklyn. She lived in Brooklyn, and she was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. That's her team, the Bums of the 50s. And my mom and dad grew up in Brooklyn as well, and so they became Brooklyn Dodgers fans. You know what they did, specifically my grandma? Hate the Yankees. That was just given. You hate the Yankees. So when the Dodgers left and, everybody's hearts were broken in Brooklyn, my grandma adopted the New York Mets. And so I would go over to her house when she was alive. She passed away when I was in college, but when I would go over when I was young, she'd be watching Channel 9 WOR, watching the Mets every single night. She was it was usually her alone because my grandfather had passed away a number of years even before I was alive, so she was mostly alone. So the Mets kept her company. So, that wasn't a choice that I had to adopt the Mets. That was just in my blood. Sometimes we don't have choices here. And the idea that you can be manipulated or exploited because some heartless owner just decides on a whim to do X, Y, or Z bothers me to no end. So I hate that part of it for the A's fan. I just hate relocation in general. I've always hated it. I hate that the Sonics moved. I hate that the original Browns moved. I hate that the Oilers moved. Go down the list. I almost to a fault hate every single move. I hate that the Nordiques moved. I hate that the Whalers moved. It's in my blood. I hate that. But this one bothers me even more because it's a con, and most of the media doesn't realize what's going on because they don't care to look at it. If this was football, they would look deeper. But baseball's kind of an afterthought for a lot of the national media, the people that have the biggest voices. And the con is that most people see an empty Oakland Coliseum and they figure, well, there's no A's fans. And that's not true. This has been an orchestrated tank by ownership to move. So John Fisher has literally never re-signed a free agent of his own team. Think about that. They've never extended anybody. They've never signed a free agent from another team. They don't put any money into the Oakland Coliseum. So you're asking a fan base to go show up to a rotten, decrepit stadium that's really a football stadium, now not even, to go watch a team that you're trying to, lose 100 games every year so that nobody has an attachment to this. And then you're selling that as apathy so that you have to move. It's all a shell game that's happening. And again, if this was happening in football, it would be called out. But nobody cares enough. And I just hate this because it's so transparent. Also, look at how badly they're botching moving to Vegas. It's one big, cluster F. And it's because the ownership of the A's is a disaster. John Fisher is rudderless. He is disorganized. He is antisocial. He's secretive. He has never done a public Q&A about moving. Think about that. He's going to take a franchise that's been there for 60 years, move him. He's never done a public Q&A. Number two, never done a press conference about this. Number two, they don't have their renderings yet. These were supposed to be done months ago. The site in Las Vegas that's being used, most people in Las Vegas don't want. I was just out there 2 weeks ago for the Super Bowl. Everyone's like, that site sucks. So the mayor of Las Vegas is like, they should just stay. It's so bad what he's doing because he's never earned any of his money. His parents created the Gap, the clothing brand. So he just was bequeathed all these millions of dollars and he's using it to just move a team. He's so bad that I just feel as though this is criminal that you would allow somebody that bad at what he does, owning a team, to move the team. Like, that's an enormous thing. That's the most enormous thing. And you're letting that guy do it? It's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. So that's why I rant on it, because I really feel as though somebody needs to keep yelling about this from a national level so that people recognize the type of con that's going on. It's a big scam that's happening every single day that thankfully now the baseball insiders like Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal are starting to talk about, like, this is broken. Ryan writes in, DA, are you a soccer fan? I am. I grew up playing soccer to a small degree. I played through sophomore year high school, and then I was not good enough for varsity. We had a pretty decent varsity team, so I just said, hanging up the cleats, going to take the microphone. And I called their games when they had big rivalry games or section games. I worked for the sections like our county. I worked for MLS's New England Revolution for 3 years as their sideline reporter. And I just generally love the game. And I really feel a certain kinship to MLS because when I was in Kansas City, they were the Wizards. And we did fan outings called the Whiz Wagon. We put everybody on a bus shuttle and brought them down to Arrowhead to tailgate and have a good time. That was a lot of fun. When I was with, in Boston, I did the same thing with the Revolution. And I think the atmosphere and the pageantry around soccer, even here in the States with MLS, is so cool. It's so unique. It's a real family-oriented vibe. And from the chants and the songs and the supporter sections, the signage, I just think it's really unique and really cool. And now we have all of these soccer-specific stadiums, so you have these great experiences that I really love. I love when it works. And I love the fact that that's also something for a next generation of fans to make themselves, to make it themselves. I know that you hear this a lot in Seattle or Atlanta or Orlando, places where expansion teams of MLS really hit gold, Nashville, Cincinnati, that kids, Gen Zers, what have you, were like, I want something that wasn't my parents. I want a sport that's my own, Portland. And they've adopted it, and I think it's awesome. And every time I get to go to another stadium, I'm kind of blown away. One of my Nomad videos, which is my travel series, also on this channel, I got behind the scenes at a Houston Dynamo game, and the supporter section was insane. You should check that out because I had my brother, who's a cinematographer, photog editor. He works in a lot of documentaries. I had him shoot it on film, and it looks really cool. It's of all the Nomads, it looks different because it's shot with film, digital film, but it's really, really cool. So yeah, I love it. Timbo Slice asks, when is Nomad coming back? I don't know. I got this project right now is eating up a lot of my time, but once we get this up and running, I still have a few episodes, including my London episode where I got to go to a Tottenham game and a Liverpool match that I still have to put out there. So there's still episodes in the can that I got to get to. Chris writes in, will Steve Cohen be a joke in the end instead of a proponent to our Major League Baseball team? No, I still think Steve Cohen is incredibly important for the game and for the New York Mets. I have not lost faith. I know this team, they're not supposed to be very good. This year's team's not supposed to be very good. I know that they got outbid for Shohei. But number one, Mets ownership had always acted as though it was a real chore to spend money, even though you were in the number one market in America. And when they did, it was like, well, now we spend money, so it's we better get something out of it. It shouldn't be that heavy of a lift. Number two, Steve Cohen, just like a lot of people, owners, billionaires, have to go through a growing period of what works and what doesn't. And then eventually they get into okay, this is what works. This is what the baseball people or the football people tell me. So this is what I should do. And there was going to be fits and starts. The idea that I didn't like that he said we're going to win a World Series within 5 years because that was unrealistic. I look at a guy like Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft turned into one of the best owners in sports, but not because right off the bat he nailed it. I mean, think about it. Right off the bat, he had the friction with Bill Parcells. He hired Pete Carroll. That didn't go well. The early Belichick years didn't go well either. Eventually, he kind of figured out, okay, stabilize, stay the course, trust what you have, get out of the way, support system, what have you. I think the fact that Steve Cohen's already starting to do that pivot a little bit means that he's starting to learn some lessons, which is good. You know, to build a winner takes a long time, but also baseball needs owners that stop acting like they're poor. I'm so sick and tired of billionaires acting as though it's such a huge lift to spend money. They all have it. They all have tons of revenue. John Fisher in Oakland makes $70 million a year in television revenue. $70 million a year in local TV revenue. That's NBC Sports Bay Area. Gives him $70 million. Now he wants to leave a market that gives him $70 million a year. If all he did was just invest local TV money into his roster, they'd have a $70 million payroll. Huh? That nothing to do with your Fox and TBS national money coming in. Okay? That has nothing to do with your merchandising, what you get as a digital share of MLB.com and all the shared websites, MLBProShop.com or MLBShop.com. None of that revenue is factoring in here. $70 million a year the A's make in local TV revenue. Why couldn't you spend that? Why? The rest of your expenditures, paying your staff, X, Y, and Z, leasing, what have you, upkeep, maintenance, parking, all of that stuff. You can't find that money with your national TV money, Fox, TBS. You can't get it from your revenue shares. You can't get it through your merchandising. You can get it through your digital. Like, that's a joke. So I hate when owners, especially in baseball, say there's no money. There's plenty of money. All of you guys. Marlins, Rays, everybody. You got cash. You might not have Dodgers cash, but you got cash. And Moist Pork, my man, also an amazing listener, longtime tweeter. Get to know this guy because he was one of the most important pieces of the chat when we were doing the live show on CBS. So I have a feeling Moist Pork is going to be that type of guy here as part of our Q&DA chats as well. And when we launch the live show weekly, says, are you going to go down to spring training again this year? Yes, I am. I'm heading down there on Thursday after the show, going to West Palm, going to take in a game probably in Jupiter, West Palm, maybe Port St. Lucie. Get to see a few teams. I'm dying here with the weather. In New York, it's been cold. It's been freezing. There's snow on the ground still for a month. I'm starting to get itchy. So I'm going to head down to spring training. Me and a bunch of my high school buddies have done this for almost 10 years now. Late February, early March, we go down to see some spring training. So I'm very excited. I'm going to be there late Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, head back Sunday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I will definitely be posting about that on my social channels and maybe knock out a video or two for the YouTube channel. All right. I'm going to wrap up here because I've kept you guys far too long. But the final question comes to us from Richard, who leaves this comment on YouTube. Did Colin Cowherd get younger and color his hair? I don't know if that is a backhanded compliment. I don't know if I should take that as I mean, Colin is one of the most successful sports talk hosts to ever do this. But I don't know if I should be compared to Colin in any way, shape, or form. He's also quite polarizing, and I know a lot of people don't love him. So I can't tell whether that's supposed to be a compliment or not, but I'll take it as a compliment for now, okay? All right. This Q&DA, man, was really great. Thank you, everybody. Dixieland Dan, thank you for this, bud. We'll keep doing it in good health, everybody. Thanks to the Marquette Marvel, Mr. Aiden Hatton, for putting everything together, graphic-wise, putting this thing on, and we're going to keep doing this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday night, everybody. Going to keep pounding out those videos for you guys. You get those. And if you care to listen, I'll be on in the morning starting at 6 a.m. Eastern Time on Channel 82, The DA Show with Babchick on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Everybody have a great rest of your Sunday night, and thank you for tuning in to the inaugural live Q&DA. The mothership disconnects.